You're listening to the Women in Cybersecurity Podcast, where global voices meet to inspire, inform, and ignite change in the world of cyber. Hosted by Yuri Diogenes, Alexandra Francu, and myself, Yulia Iancu, we bring you real stories, expert insights, and bold conversations from the front lines of cybersecurity. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello everyone, welcome to Women in Cybersecurity Podcast, episode 1. I'm here with my co-hosts, Alexandra Francu and Yuri Diogenes.
Hello. Yes, and today we have our very first guest, Paula Januszkiewicz. We are very excited to welcome you here, Paula. Just a quick bio for the people who are listening to us. We're gonna present Paula a little bit. So Paula is the CEO and founder of CQURE and CQURE Academy with over 17 years in cybersecurity. She's one of the few experts worldwide with access to Microsoft Windows source code and has worked as a consultant for Microsoft, Microsoft Regional Director and Certified Ethical Hacker. Paula is also a sought-after speaker at global events such as RSA and Black Hat. So her work blends deep technical expertise with real world insights. So yes, welcome to the show, Paula. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. Very, very lovely to be here, definitely. With actually one small change, because I haven't been working for Microsoft, but I was working more like an external consultant, because I've been driving my company for the past 17 years right now, and I mean, how old I could be right now. So there we go. But absolutely a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, it's so great to see you again. We met recently in Belgium after more than 10 years, because last time we met was at TechEd New Orleans, I think.
Yeah,
long time ago. It was still TechEd. I think it was 2012.
Definitely.
And prior to that, we met at Hacker House in Atlanta. We know each other for a long time.
Yes.
Well, I would like to start going back to because you've been on this field for so many years and you've seen the evolution of not only cybersecurity but cybersecurity as a career and mainly from the woman's point of view. Because if you think about when you started more than 17 years ago, the landscape and the acceptance was probably even harder. So you were one of the trailblazers that started kind of this movement. And tell us a little bit more, how did you migrate from the IT field probably to cyber?
Great question, to be honest. And I'll be super open with you. So feel free to ask any questions because it's a very important subject. So I'm very grateful, especially for the ladies, for arranging that. So I have to say that at the very beginning. But I will tell you that from the very beginning, I was like interested in not really cybersecurity because it wasn't really named that way in the past, but it was more about getting into details of things. So, for example, if there's some certain security settings that were out there within the Windows 3.11 and that kind of stuff, I was absolutely interested in like learning how that works, and that kind of a need for doing the deep dive into the things that are unknown and there's something that depends on it and so on. Then that's what brought me to the field, I think, of cybersecurity. It's a need of knowing more, and that's kind of what drives people in cyber.
Yeah. And as you said, it was not even called cybersecurity back in the day. It was more your curiosity that sparkled the need to go to that. Just a quick follow-up before I hand over to Alex and you. They are full of questions. But one follow-up question real quick. Did you felt any resistance in that beginning to join this field, or did you feel welcome?
Well, definitely not welcome. So I'll cross that out. But it's you know, like many years ago, it has been in general, first of all, a new subject, and it's a subject that requires the deep dive. So like a question is like in what kind of situations you can prove your knowledge, or you have to maybe kind of defend your opinions. So it's kind of like towards that. So quite often I was fine, but I felt that I'm fine because I have to prove my knowledge every single time, and because I was rather trying to keep it so deep, then it would be difficult to question what I'm saying, because it's like you maybe could go deeper, but only there's like this tiny percentage of people that could potentially do it. So like I defended myself naturally by just knowing as much as I could in a certain subjects. So that's why I would say I was probably doing fine. But you know, that there were some situations that I've been to, like, don't want to complain on that, because it's like not even to blame someone, but it's just a stereotype that someone was applying, and it was applied more definitely in the past than it is right now. Now it's very unpopular to apply the stereotype, but in the past, of course, when I appeared as a trainer on one of the events, then the guy was like, "Oh, can you make me a coffee?" Literally, and
Wow.
and I did that. No complaints. And then I started the training, and he was like, "Whoa!" And then during the lunchtime, he like said, "Oh, sorry, that like I didn't know." I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, at least you got a coffee, so you guys."
Just only him.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've been in that kind of situation, yeah. And I've been also in a situation where I was like, that's a funny story, by the way, but I was literally rejected from the event because it was like a internal event of some company, because the people that were managing it literally said that they don't want to have any woman. And if you wonder how I learned that, is because they sent an email like in a wrong way to me by accident, and then I was like, what?
Wow.
Yeah,
I hope that this was years ago, Paula.
this is
Because-
probably like 2-3 years ago,
Wow, that's
but the copy
crazy.
was like 20 years ago.
Okay, but that one is crazy.
Yeah. So, but you know, like things like that still happen. But I think how we can totally minimize the risk of these, it's knowledge, and knowledge always defends itself. And I'm a deep believer that, you know, most of the people in this world believe in the same thing, and let's kind of keep it like that. And I prefer not to even think like about any other possible scenarios. And if there is any kind of scenario like that, then I don't want to deal with this person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So very related to this educational piece, you have helped build the CQURE Academy into this training powerhouse. What or how was your approach towards this sort of education being a bit different, considering all the aspects that you've mentioned earlier, right? Regarding stereotypes, the inclusion aspect.
You know, like it's a good question, but I always have like maybe let's revert a little bit the other statement here, is that if there is a value, how could it be that smart people will reject the value? And yet again, like there's lots of people in this world that want to grow, and they don't want to deal with any negativity or anything like that, any stereotype. Like stereotype to me, it's to be blind, because it's the automatic rejection of all the other meaningful values that could actually bring a change. So at the end, you know, like if we focus on a value and we think about like, oh, what's good out there, let's do it, let's push it, then eventually with time we're gonna build even a greater value and a greater value. And of course, in many situations like that, like within all these years I've been doing it, I've been into many situations that I would like want not to be in those, but that totally makes you stronger, and we can't blame anything. It's just a situation that you are in. Let's deal with it. And yet again, I think knowledge always defends itself. could we be like potentially cut off by the unknown from the opportunities? Of course we can. But yet again, returning to the point zero, smart people will not use stereotype because it just like otherwise it will make them blind. And to be blind and to be smart, that's just like opposite words over there.
I would like to circle back a little bit because I'm very curious about your upbringing and how did you become who you are today? And in this area of the question, because you're also an entrepreneur, so how do you see these differences from your perspective?
You know, like I have a belief that we have a very, as human beings, I'm going to sound a bit philosophical right now maybe, but we have a very undiscovered brain power. And I think that our minds can do miracles. And it's just a matter of how we enable them. And it's not really like an empty talk. I'll give you some example in a moment, but in general, I am a very, very positive thinker. And I will not waste my time. Of course, it happens to me too, but I will in general try not to waste my time on thinking about things that could possibly worry me, and there is nothing that's coming out of that. And that's like my saint rule over there. Like if there is a thinking that doesn't take me anywhere, why should I think about that? And if it's not a positive thinking, then definitely I will need to think 3 times, why would I need to be in that kind of situation? And you know, like when you think about what makes us active, motivated, like thinking forward and eventually creative, it's the positive process about like thinking forward in general. So just to put it into details, like if you would have, for example, let's say elderly person, and it's a healthy person capable to do different things and so on, like I'm sure we have similar examples from various fields. Some grandmas/grandpas, they would want to stay home and not to move out. But they are the ones that are super active. Yeah, they will just go for the walk, read a book, sign up for the additional university maybe, and so on. And I've read recently a very interesting article, many of those really, but recently actually that was very cool. From the 90 years old businessman who was of course lucky enough to get into this age, but he said that what's the secret for him for the longevity is actually that he thinks. He's totally like, using his mind to create new ideas and so on, and that kind of a mindset, so that processing, that activity that we get over there, I'm a believer that really what makes a success, because that makes us to feel alive, versus we could be sitting and we are like, oh, it's so boring here, or like, I don't like this job, or and so on. Like nobody can solve our problems for us. We always have to grab the stuff within our hands. And there is one statement that I really like to think about, is that by default, it's no. Anything you do, you convert to yes. And let's stay with that for the whole life.
Awesome. I love that, Paula. And one thing that you said in the beginning that I resonate a lot is you never had a victim mindset. And I think that's what makes you so successful on the things that you do. Because think about it, in the coffee situation, if 20 years ago you experienced that, and after that you just went out and started complaining about how you were treated and started whining about it and just be miserable, you would never have grown the way you did.
We have only one
So
client.
as you said, you dealt with that. Not a pleasant experience. I'm not saying it was good, but you didn't allow that experience to define you.
Absolutely. Well, very well said, Yuri. And And, of course, there are moments where we are weaker. Yeah. And then there are moments that we are like, oh, like why this is all happening and stuff like that. But we always have to be back to that one thought that's there, that we only have one time. And we only have that 5 minutes. And if it's a 5 minutes that we can spend on complaining versus resting, like it's every single minute is a choice. And the older we become, the faster time flies. And right. And I'm thinking, like, is it really worth to like think too long about like things that actually make us even more sad, and that makes us even less productive? And it's not that we have to be all the time crazy productive because there is the race or something. Not this way. It's just for ourselves, and we can do better, we can do worse, but we can do good for us, and we can maximize our chance. Even for ourselves, even to feel better, even to I don't know, drink a cup of tea instead of like being like this. Like we don't need this in our lives. And I really like think that at least 80% of everything, it's a mindset. And that mindset drives everything, including our body.
Yeah. What is very interesting is seeing you here, even virtually, and probably it will be the same for those listening. The incredible energy, that positive energy that you transpire, and that's something that I feel it's a bit contagious as well. So,
Good to hear. Take as much as you can.
how much do you have?
Probably a lot, probably a lot.
You have spoken at various conferences across all continents. What's something that stood out for you being a speaker at these conferences, or what sort of differences have you seen throughout these years?
That's a good question. Like it's like the more, of course, things are happening, the more you are into subjects, the more you come up with like some conclusions how to do better, and possibly what kind of a impact you can bring. And there's one thing that comes to my mind, that regardless the audience, whether it doesn't really matter what kind of region it is. Of course, the regions differ in the response and so on. Different countries, they get different cultures. That's all good. And it's just a matter of delivery eventually, how you approach this. So that's one technical aspect of that. But the important, I think, aspect of that is that saying anything in public, it's very responsible, must be very responsible. It requires you to rethink what's the impact that you're actually doing over there. And it's not about you, it's about them. And eventually it might be about you, but it's about you delivering something useful. And then I'm always having in mind, like, okay, how can I use that energy and convert it into the conclusions that people can take or get into, and eventually implement some interesting stuff that is coming from the technical presentations, homework, and so on. And that's our role over there. Like, why do we do the public speaking? To show how amazing we are? No, like something got us to that point. So it means that someone believed that already. So we want that already in some sense. So now it's us to do the responsible job over there, and to make sure that we serve the purpose. And I think to serve the purpose and be like here now and be very mindfully present on the stage, that's what makes the success. And it might be even like, your demos may not work out, but the way how you would build through that position the trust that your audience is gonna give you, hopefully, I think that is the ultimate goal of any presentation on the stage. So what you and your personality and so on, and how you can use these factors to create the trust. And once you get that trust and you are yourself, then you will deliver. And that's kind of like ultimately deeply there.
how does the preparation before such an event go for you? Does it become easier in years, throughout the years? Or do you prepare with the same grind and legwork and...
Yeah, every presentation, I think, requires preparation. If we're talking about some new content possibly and so on, I think that you need approximately 2 months of time, not to work continuously because nobody can do it, but just to start your work before that, so that you have enough pace and like a peaceful approach to make sure that all of the components will be there and ready. So it's kind of like that. So I plan the demos, I plan the environment. Today, I always have a backup. I always, of course, try to solve the problem on the stage if it appears, because it's kind of cool. Like, people like that, Roman Empire style, blood on the stage kind of activity when the speaker is bleeding because the demos aren't working out. Like that, yeah.
People also stays with you. If you say it, it stays with you, so people will remember it with a positive thinking. So
yeah, and then you are like, okay, like on the stage, if you know what you are doing because you tested it, then you solve the problem. When you solve the problem, then people love it even more. So yeah, and then in a worst case, you always have a backup, like in a form of a recorded video. But also, don't forget about one thing, like in terms of preparation. Like, we have to be preparing for the unknown. For example, sometimes when you get into the stage, especially for the technical presentations, when you get a laptop and you get a podium and you have to like have a space for the mouse maybe, because you have a lot of that, then if you're doing it live, which is, I think, to be honest, the best. But sometimes these podiums are not great. They are like not straight. They are like with the certain like an angle, yeah. And this is really bad because the mouse doesn't work properly. Like this is really bad. And then you are stuck with like I got a Lenovo, that little, yeah. Like, and then you've got to put like 1,000 people, and I have to be doing this. It's just no. And how to do it in a way I want to do it, in a like good speed, good pace, and so on. So some of the demos I decide already when I see my technical conditions that I'm gonna do live because they are short, they are easy, I can do it actually with the track point. But some of them I'm like, no, I'm gonna play them from the video, which is prepared in a way that most of the people will not see it's a video sometimes, which is a good thing. I mean, there's nothing bad in a video. I would do the same precisely, but
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I read your chapter in Yuri's book, which I actually have here, Building a Career in Cybersecurity, and I really loved it. And I'm super grateful that you are here with us because you're so powerful and so strong. So it's just motivating and inspiring. And I read a couple of things that I really loved about. And one thing is maybe related to what you said before, and I'd like to maybe quote it a little bit. And it's most importantly, learn from your successes and mistakes. Do not let setbacks discourage you. They are inevitable. Embrace them and learn from them. I have had my fair share of failures along the way, and in fact, I believe those failures helped me grow and learn the most. So I'm very curious, would you like to share something with us? Maybe a lesson that you learned that will help women listening to us or young women listening, and even ourselves.
Well, I have so many stories, but I'm just wondering which caliber of the story should I bring?
Which one comes first?
My intense. Oh, well, the most intense would be really, really tough. Like, we had to engage lawyers so that I can safely land in a certain country. So there we go. Yeah. So that's because of the different politics that we were not even engaged with, but we were impacted by it. So eventually there was quite a lot of interesting things. But sometimes you have the stories that like brings you shivers. Sometimes you got stories where you have to kind of like stand up and then basically move on. I think like it's usually related with people, yeah. So for example, it might be that on the way you're going to lose some kind of a talent. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Could be, for example, then you would think, so it's more about the feeling. Yeah. So you would think like, this is not good. Like what I'm going to do. I don't have a solution currently in place and so on. But solutions starts coming up in the moment, literally in the moment you start searching for it. That's like solution. It's not necessarily the final finding. The solution is the way to do something, because someone must start somewhere. So I was in a situation where I lost a talent from the team, and then I did not have, or I thought so, I didn't have that much of a backup. But then I was like, no, I'm gonna like spread my wings and then start like asking through people and so on. And then eventually within like 2 weeks, I was done with the 4 options that I could choose from. So like, I think that maybe sometimes we tend to stay in like our one place, and we kind of like think that we are in a certain bubble, but then we have to kind of like demolish the bubble immediately. So it's kind of there should be like a red button somewhere. Yeah? And that could be like, decide for me, like the bubble is gone. Let's take the action. Yeah. So I saw the picture some way like ago, and it was like a statement. This is where you are, and it was like a long line, and then that was like and this is where you grow. And that was beyond like a safe zone that you're in, and pushing yourself out of the safe zone. It's the daily operation you should do. Yeah, it's like this. But I'm just thinking about some stressful stories. Nothing it's like that's stressful at the end. When you conclude it and you look back in time, you're like, nah, that was nothing. And eventually, you're just becoming stronger and stronger. So we had like situations where there was an incident at the customer side, and we had to, pack up and then travel during the pandemic by cars because you couldn't fly, because the customer was completely smashed and they were just like encrypted. And I think that could actually be a nice story to tell. And then eventually, because there are so many cool aspects of it, but then eventually, like when we kind of like get there, then we learned that the customer actually paid the ransom over there, and they got the decryptor that wasn't working. It's probably one of my favorite stories, to be honest. And then with my colleague, we actually took the decryptor because, to be honest, the job over there was quite boring. It was about recovering the systems and so on. And I was like, I'm sure we can do more about that. And then we took that decryptor, and then we reverse engineer it, and then eventually we fixed it because the decryptor was actually broken. It was badly written, and then we managed on Friday to recover the whole customer.
So the customer was there was a ransomware, and they paid, and the key was not working. The key that they gave
exactly.
back.
Yes. And the reason why it wasn't working is because the ransomware, while it was encrypting data, it was getting into the data like a couple of times because the files were open, so they were blocked for the writing, so the ransomware was crashing and so on. So eventually, like some of the files were encrypted with like a 5-6 rounds. And then the decryptor was only written to be working for like a 1 round. So we had to figure out like what are the preconditions, and then eventually fix the decryptor in the way that it would consider these 5-6 rounds and so on. So that was actually quite an interesting part.
Maybe you could contact the people who ransom that to give them a lesson about how they know. Interesting.
Well, I'd like to switch gears again, but because not only you are a great professional, but you own your company. As Julia was reading the chapter, you share some of your experience in that part of the book, which I'm super grateful for your participation. Now, as a hire manager, and I know that you like to do a lot of things on your own. We talk about this when we were in Belgium, that you still driving so many areas of your business on your own. But if you have to hire someone, what are some of the attributes of the candidates that you are hiring? What are some of the things that you think, well, this person really has what I need?
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. So it's a very difficult process, especially when you take into consideration a relatively small team, because then the chemistry must match. So my demands, let's maybe make a small excuse at the beginning, are a little higher maybe than they could be, for example, in the bigger companies, because I'm also looking for that chemistry that could be good for the team. But we are always during the a recruitment process asking the question, what do you like to do in a free time? What makes you happy? Kind of I know it sounds like a boring HR type of questions, but I want to know that a person is actually happy because of something. I would love to see that. And I really like to ask one more question, name 3, for example, things that bring a huge value to you in your life. Yeah, what's important for you, this. And what's important? Yeah, this. And someone say what it's a quite a dangerous question too, because some people might think oh, what does my future employer want to hear? But we always explain it that just be yourself. It's not a matter of we're gonna evaluate that. I just out of curiosity. And you know how many people are not capable to say anything about that? That's interesting. And for example, for me, a true value is to deliver the good quality of whatever I do. For me, it's very important. In general, I don't know, when I drive a car, that kind of value comes to my mind. I want to be a good driver, or I want to bake a good cake, or I want to do this. This is a very important value that I've got, and I'll, for example, name that. Yeah, I would also name probably happiness. I will also name the honesty. I really like to work with the team that is very open. We try to build this culture all the time. It's a ongoing process within CQURE, that we need to have the team that is not afraid to say I don't know, and that's fine. We are not geniuses in all of the things that are out there. So but some people are maybe ashamed that if I would say that I don't know, then basically they're gonna judge me. No judgments. Yeah, for example. So I'll be able to mention this, and not many people actually can mention this. So they're they start to think on the calls or on the meetings, and they're elaborating around that. But if we ask name 3, okay, so you said it all. Let's sum it up. 3 things. They cannot do it. And that means grounded people. It's basically what I'm looking for.
And do you see a difference in generations when you ask those questions? The answer varies a lot according to the generation.
What should I say? Within our team, so maybe from that perspective, within our team, we've got people that are 20 something, and they are actually so well established. We got them. Yeah, and they grow with us. Maybe it wasn't like that even at the beginning, but it started to be like that because they hang out with responsible people. So they kind of take the values from them, and that's awesome. We all need this. But yes, eventually, of course, the more experience we become, the more aware we become regarding this kind of statements. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think is an interesting call, because many people go through the interview and they only prepare technically about the interview, and they are completely unprepared for soft skills questions, for questions that are not following a script. And you just confirm that those things are important, because it shows someone's character, and that's very important, because it's easier to train someone to be a very good technical. but you cannot change, or it's much harder to change someone's character.
Absolutely. That character, like in cybersecurity, like from that technical, semi-technical skill, I would look for something that I would call hyperactivity. So I don't know, but I want to know, and I'm gonna know how I'm gonna learn this. And there is no like I will not know. It might be I don't know currently, but I'm gonna know tomorrow. So I'm kind of like also looking for this kind of people. Like, well, I don't know that, but let's figure it out like this. Not like, I don't know, ask someone else. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to ask, because you are also a hiring manager, have you also seen, because in the previous episode, Yuri spoke about the reason why he came up with the program of women in cybersecurity. I'm curious if you've seen a difference in gender while applying to the job, or while the confidence of women. Have you observed that in your process?
That's a good one. But I would say honestly, no, because also the atmosphere that we are trying to put on during the interviews, it's very, very friendly. And it's very hard for someone to not to be a part of that flow. So we are really trying to like build a good atmosphere. Then it would mean that someone is just not talking at all, and that it's completely not gender related. Yeah. So we are trying to engage like all the people. And if someone is it feels good in a certain environment, then I wouldn't see the difference.
No, I guess Yuli's question, Yuli's question, I think, which come from our previous episode, is more about, do you see a difference in ratio of resumes that you receive, more male than female?
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah, it's also coming, like from the past, that tech is more guys and more like soft humanistic, as more ladies, kind of like literature is our thing, military is the thing of the guys. Like it's kind of like coming from there, and eventually we see definitely a huge difference over here, but it is what it is. There's lots of encouragement programs, and like we are doing this right now. Yeah, for women to be engaged in cybersecurity, it's definitely a great adventure. But eventually, if we get there, if we know things, if we are eager to learn more, for me, that is enough for someone to be eventually in cybersecurity. And for example, like approximately almost a year ago, something like that, a little bit over 6 months, we hired a guy because he sent us a CV, but we were like, yeah, kind of like interesting. We were recruiting anybody, but then he did that, and we were like, yeah, let's do a call together, and then let's see. And eventually, he was like a junior, not knowing that much, not that detailed in different things and so on. Right now, he's amazing. Like, I mean, great growth. Like, he totally spread his wings, and he's like willing to know more. He's like not afraid to ask and so on. So if there's a good growth environment, then basically, and if we do ask right questions, and if that doesn't depend on the other people, eventually we kind of created an environment for ourselves. And yes, we may not be lucky eventually and be in a team that's not sharing and stuff like that, but there's lots of people that they want to share, they also want to grow, and it of course in a lot of cases depends on ourselves, but in some small part it also depends on the environment. But we also have an impact on that environment, and if eventually all of that doesn't work out, we have to change the environment.
Yeah. Alex, you were going to ask something.
Yeah, because we talk about stereotypes or things that are not standard, sort to say, neither about candidates working in cybersecurity, dealing with technical situations. What's a myth about cybersecurity that you wish people would stop believing altogether?
technically there are many. Like, for example, deny does not precede like allow and stuff like that. But in overall look, overall look, I would say that you have to be all the time up to date. I think that's a bit of a myth because it's physically impossible to be done. Like, how can you be up to date and be able to exploit all the exploits on the daily basis? Then you will not have your personal life. That's not great. But that's what the team is for as well. Yeah, so like if we divide that amount of potential vulnerabilities that are out there by the team members, then that's basically what we need. So that's why there is this statement that, in cybersecurity, sharing is caring, but of course that has many meanings. But to me, it means that my team has got my back, I got their back, and if there is a vulnerability and I'm currently in flight, for example, and I'm not even knowing that it exists, I'm landing and my team has already tested it, for example, and there was one person to which there was a task assigned to, and then basically we've got the team knowledge how to exploit it eventually. So I think it's necessary eventually, but if we apply it to the single human being, it's not that you have to read the news everywhere you move and you need to know every single detail. Like, no, it's okay to not to know things. Eventually you will know, but not today. Yeah.
We are coming up to the end. I have just 2 questions to wrap up. I want to ask Yulia if she has any question before I finish with my 2.
Of course, we have many questions, but if you're wrapping up to the end, what I would like to ask a more maybe technical question, like what do you think is the most underestimated threat that is currently happening right now?
So today, I would say that companies already invested into lots of cybersecurity solutions. They got them. We're pretty well equipped. Almost every company is pretty well equipped with like this or that, more or less, but in general, pretty good stuff. And I would say, well, of course, trusting it, that's a very bad concept to have. But in lots of companies, there are blind spots. And when we take into consideration today the level of monitorability that could give us a transparency of what's going on, that is basically something that we need to have. And believing that the solutions will address us that thing, that's a myth. That's a mistake, actually. So eventually, we need to make sure that we're going to analyze all the blind spots. And I don't think that, in a vast majority of cases, the companies are because they don't. They are not leveraging the solutions that they paid for in a way that they could be leveraged. Like, for example, CM Solutions is a great example for that. They are very often misconfigured. They have so many options, but they are as good as the data that they are processing. And the companies are just now putting the data in so that they don't know what's going on anyway, but they got CM. So that's kind of like, I think, the technical direction that we should move on. And to many other things. But if there's number one thing, it's underutilizing what we got.
Awesome. That's a great thought. We actually have, you are episode number 1. So we have so many ideas for this podcast. I'm super excited and super grateful to have you here, Paula. We actually have a black, a red hat and a blue hat with Yulia. Yulia, if you can show for the people that are watching this.
We have a red hat. And then you have a blue hat.
Yeah. So we are supposed to pick up one of those to ask questions, but I'm gonna do something different with you today. Okay. So the blue hat is security posture management, preventative work, and the red hat will be threat detection. If you were asked to prioritize those 2 domains, what will be the scale? 50-50, 60-40? What would you say that is important to do nowadays?
Well, I would say 70% blue and 30% red, because we do have enough solutions to be good and to minimize the risk to the point that, like we could do the best fishing ever, but that's not going to work out, or eventually it will, but it's going to be so expensive that nobody's going to basically step into this field. So they'll try to figure out probably some other ways, and then other ways will be secured. So like in my soul, I'm red, but in my heart, in a sense, but in my mind, I'm definitely blue. And I'm a big fan of solution delivery to the customers versus attacking them and then bringing no conclusions.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love this because, unfortunately, we see so many customers investing much more in threat detection than doing the basics, doing the homework. And year over year on our digital defense report, we released that 98% of the attacks could have been prevented with basic security hygiene. So it's huge. So your answer is fantastic. And the last one that I have before we wrap up is a question that everyone is asking: how AI is going to affect cybersecurity jobs in your perspective as someone that owns a company and also deals with a lot of customers.
So it depends like when. Yeah, today, next year, in the next couple of years, but I'm totally excited for AI to be there. Like I'm a big fan of speed. So like the speed, the scale, like I like that. And like if we get a possibility to do the threat hunting with AI efficiently to pull out the data that we want to pull. Of course, there might be some automation, and then the results might be even given to us, taking it one step further. But for example, today, if we got a possibility to ask the question to the base, like give me all the interesting processes that have these kind of features that were run within that timeline by these users that were doing that, this and that, yeah, then awesome, because then we can use our brain finally to say like, I want that, and then I'm going to get it. And that's going to be the answer to the question that we all need. So that's AI. On the other hand, AI speeds up the process for the detection of the 0 days in the bad hands, in the good hands as well. But then it means in both types of hands, that speeds up the growth. So that's also good. The vulnerabilities eventually must be there so that we can correct them, and hopefully they will appear in an ethical way. So kind of this. Also, when we think about the testing and finding out the juicy fruits in the infrastructure, then also AI can speed up the whole process. So there's all good to, like in my mind, about that. Of course, there are some dangers related to that, but considering that it's going to be implementing all well and making it a little bit more ideal here in the verbiage, then I see lots of positive aspects that it could bring and make our jobs easier.
Absolutely. I also want to get your thoughts. Well, it's really hard to try to wrap up this because one question pushed to the other, but do you also see that AI can replace some humans in the cybersecurity field? For example, I have a friend of mine that he has a company, and he said, well, instead of me hiring 5 pen testers, I can just build agents and now have just 1 pen tester and 3 or 4 agents doing the job. What is your take on that? Do you think is going to negatively affect the job market?
I'm sure it will in a certain point. Yeah, I'm sure. But it also creates opportunities. And if we would think that, okay, so if I know what I'm doing, why don't I, for example, create an app like that and so on? Of course, we are getting into the bit of a uncomfortable field where people would need to race. And I've heard a very interesting statement lately that today the survival is speed. It's not even that much of a capability, but because everybody's got access to the same tools. Yeah, of course, they might be more expensive, but eventually the AI tools aren't that expensive. So it's a matter of our idea and pushing it through and so on. But Of course, it's gonna impact the human part, absolutely. But I would rather think about it as an opportunity. So how today we can make our work to be working even better, for example, in the eyes of someone who is in the service world paying for it, and then bring the value like that. We definitely, what we have to do is the homework, and we have to think about how we can bring a change by maybe bringing AI on board, or how can we deliver the services better, faster, and so on. Like, we have to do that homework. Like, if we don't do anything today, we will stay behind. And that's going to be the situation that we're thinking about. It's very uncomfortable because something that has been working for the past 20 years, that we were slightly changing, when the processes were kind of the same, there was a slow growth, cybersecurity eventually became important, the solutions started to pop up, and there are different roles that were created. Now, boom, we got an AI, and then everything can be done faster, better, and so on. We have to do the homework.
Yeah. Well, this is my final question, Alex and Julia. I'll let you wrap up.
I'm all good. I have probably a gazillion other questions that I would find interesting, but perhaps for another time. It was a pleasure having you, Paula, and know you a bit more.
Likewise, thank you so much.
I just have one last curiosity.
Yeah.
AI, the answer to cover the gaps in observability for our customers.
Can AI cover? Yeah, absolutely. For example, we could be analyzing the different data sources. It's a very fair and great question. So it's all about the data that we can process, that's coming from the components that could be participating in the attack. So if there's any chance that any of these components could actually bring some kind of a threat or be partially used, and they do have some logging information included, then why don't just we run some logic on the top of that and extract information that would actually paint the picture? And absolutely, from the data discovery perspective, that is exactly what we might actually use it for. Just imagine, show me all the solutions that are there. I know these solutions because I already have some base. Connect to these solutions, gather the data, aggregate it in a way that could be threat focused, and build me a dashboard where I could see all of these components being impacted by the external malicious actor. Yeah, that's awesome.
That would be a security dream.
That would be exactly. That would be security dream. So we're not there yet, though, but we're not too far from it. And having that transparency in the infrastructure gives us more time and more focus on some other things. And if we would think about cybersecurity as a bit of a struggle, actually, applying what I was talking about at the very beginning, if this is a struggle, and if there is a solution for it, we eventually in future will apply it, and then that's going to give us a more perspective on something else. Or we're just going to sit on the couch, which is also good. But eventually, it's a different thing, not necessarily focusing on the issues. We got a solution, and then we move forward. So that's this opportunity that I was thinking about.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Paula. Again, I know how your schedule is crazy. You are always traveling, and just for you to take time to join us in this episode, it was tremendous. So thank you very much again.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the invitation. It has been a pleasure, and thank you for the great questions. And hopefully at the end, I would be useful in at least a minimal part for some of the listeners that could be a little bit more motivated while being in cybersecurity. So hopefully they will use this podcast also for that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, everyone, this is a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for your audience. Make sure to subscribe to our show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and see you next time.